What was shown at the beginning of this video is 494 North 495 in operation. That power Alco 494 just runs at a really high level. It was pulling a consist that is only going to be one car less than what it's going to pull regardless. And I was pulling those four cars with less than 60 mile an hour setting on an 18B transformer. As a matter of fact, the warmer the motor got, I had to keep tapping it down to keep it steady state at scaled 70 miles an hour. So its performance was just outstanding. But I mentioned to the owner that I think it would be a good idea that if we took every car, of course I'm not going to do anything to these cosmetically whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I'll be very happy to get them disassembled so I can set them aside and not risk even the least little bit of scratching on these beautiful paint workmanship. So my suggestion is to address any possible friction in the trucks. We know that drag and friction are resistance and oppose motion. And anything we can do to help out the motor, I think, is well worth it. I do that on all of my trains. So that being said, I'm simply going to remove all the trucks, make sure that the journal boxes are thoroughly clean, that the tips of the axles are thoroughly clean, and that they're properly lubricated for the smoothest of operations. I'm also going to thoroughly clean the contact wheels, check the trucks for rust, and you can see there are some rust spots on this one, and then check the other side, the interior side, for rust as well. Now all of these appear to be held in by screws instead of pins. You can see right there just above my thumb. And these appear to be the common 220 screw, I believe S220 or 230, that's used quite a bit in American Flyer, including just holding the reverse unit on. I'm going to do things like right here, it looks like the paper in the Mylar has collapsed inside the coach. I'm going to repair that. I'm going to check the paper to make sure that it's in the best possible position and do a little cleanup on the inside, just a very light cleanup. Make sure the bulbs work, and make sure the paper and the Mylar are secure. I think there's Mylar in this window. Yep. So that sheet of Mylar that probably goes down has pulled loose down here. I'm going to do that on all these. Now, I could even put it on my test, this little piece of track right here, and tell it's got quite a bit of drag on it without doing anything else. The owner has two of the mail baggage passenger combos in this collection. So there's two of those. I'm going to clean them both. He also has just a standard passenger coach. You'll recognize a window configuration. You'll notice that whoever did the workmanship on the repainting looks like they put in paper, the light filtering paper or the diffuser, to create the shades pull down effect. It's a nice effect, but I just want to make sure that they're in there and in there but good. He also has one Vistadome car, same thing. However, the light diffuser paper is missing on the Vistadome, so I'm going to put it in there. Otherwise, we don't want the bulb being exposed to, visually exposed, that when seeing it, and then it projecting light up on the ceiling of a room or something like that. So we want to check that, but you'll notice the consistency of these coaches and the paint scheme. And then finally, he has the observation car. And you can tell they're just American Flyer cars. But I'm going to make sure that from the bottom up, we have addressed the friction and drag on these so that they don't oppose the motion. And we give the locomotive every chance to pull not only its dummy A unit, but 5 coaches. It pulled 4 coaches and another dummy unit just fine. I can't see any problem with pulling these, because when I rebuilt 494, I did everything that I normally do for these. In addition to new pull mores, groove pull mores, in addition to thoroughly breaking down and adjusting the slide contacts by retensioning them and by cleaning them thoroughly, both inside the shoebox and outside the shoebox and around the shoe itself, to make sure they maintain as good a contact as possible with the rail head. So in the next video, let's take a look at least one of these cars, because I'll probably just repeat the process over and over again, which won't be too entertaining. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with one of these. There is one other thing that I want to go ahead and mention, since I am going to be addressing this light diffuser paper. Some folks have asked me, where do you get the light diffuser paper that goes in a wide variety of coaches, even cabooses? And my answer is that I took an original piece. Now I use the original vintage ones. I repurpose them if I can. If they're clean enough, I'll repurpose them, not frayed and things like that. But what I did was I took one of the vintage pieces, maybe two, of the light diffuser paper in these windows to a printer, not somebody that just sells copy paper, to a printer who probably has a wide range of different paper qualities and shades, and said, match this for me, please. They did, and when you put what I use against, now I'm going to reuse this, of course, when you put it against the vintage paper, it's pretty darn close match. But that's all I did, was take it to a print shop in which they maintain probably a good stock of paper and that has different qualities of paper, as well as different tints. Thanks again for watching Dave's American Flyer Trains. So long, everyone. Following the disassembly, ready to move on with the rebuild of the New Haven custom painted passenger coaches. The observation car has been disassembled. Now, the first thing I noticed was on the interior of this car is the fact that there is no diffuser paper. This is a Mylar that has half shaded and half clear. Now, this is either printed or stamped onto the Mylar. It's a very interesting concept. It fits perfectly, probably due to, well, it could be because you can buy it like that, or it's just that the person who did this rebuild custom cut it and did a really good job of that. I noticed that he or she has held it in with just cellophane tape. Because they have them tucked in nicely between these ridges, that there really is nothing to keep them from moving left or right. I mean, the ridge keeps them from moving left or right. They just needed something to keep it from dropping out, so they just put tape down here. And that's really nice, because cut the tape and you can pull it out without any problem. Whereas if you bond these with something like DuPont glue or other types of solvents or bonding material, they can become very problematic to retrieve. And notice that even makes the vestibule door the same way. You put a small, he or she put a small piece up there for the door. Very nice concept. Now, all I did was reinforce a couple of them. Some of them had slid downward, and I just put in a little bit more tape to make sure they stayed in that up position. So it gives it a very nice appearance of the shades pulled halfway down. Of course, I removed the wheels and axles from the trucks. One thing to note there, these are centered iron side frame trucks, so care has to be taken to remove these, because you don't want to put pressure on the centered iron portion of the truck. You only want to put it on the structure of the truck itself, right here, right in this area right here, not here. Don't pressure that, because you can break the bond. It is possible to break the bond of the centered iron side frame and the truck frame itself. Now, all I do to work around that is I just take some scrap metal like this piece and this little thing right here, which I think is a ceiling fan weight, and I position them between the axles, and then I push out on those using my snap ring pliers. And that pushes against the frame of the truck and not the center iron side frames. Now, if one becomes loose or more become loose, there's a way around that has worked extremely well for me. This one I noticed, yeah, it's just a tiny bit loose. So I want to go ahead and correct that. Once I get the wheels washed, the truck washed, and everything's finished, and I've even lubricated when I lubricate the journal boxes, I'll put the wheels back in and the axles, and then after having already cleaned this and probably applied some contact cleaner along that ridge where the centered iron side frame and the truck structure meet, I'll put a bead of crazy glue and then put a clamp like this on it. I have some small clamps, and let that cure 24 hours. Now that's what I've used over and over again, and it's worked very nicely, including even on diesel locomotive trucks. I noticed that the wire here is single thread wire with cloth insulation. It kind of surprised me. I thought maybe this came from a later model passenger coach. Everything will be washed and polished, and then I'll show it when it's ready for assembly. Yes, it turned out that the screws that the person that owned this, and I assume they did it because I've never run across, I don't think, screws on these unless it was a much later model. These are the simple S230B screws that you find used quite a bit in these American Flyer trains, from everything to the reverse unit to other items. This is just a common large globe 432 bulb. Looks to be vintage. I'll test it to make sure it's okay and clean its base and point up. So let's go on, and I'll off camera I'll clean all this up and then bring it back when we have it ready for final assembly. The rebuild of the observation coach is complete. A couple of corrections and at least one surprise. First of all, the corrections. This wire that I had pointed out earlier is actually multiple stranded. It is not a solid wire, but it does have the cloth insulation. The other one is, you may have noticed that I didn't produce the video or didn't show the video of the earlier test of 494 and 495, but of course they'll be tested, and I'll film the testing when we get all 5 of these New Haven passenger coaches finished. One surprise is that it took me a little longer to remove these axles from these trucks. Something was a little bit different. I don't know what it was, but it was a little more challenging to spread these trucks. So I'm not sure I'm going to take the axles out on the next one. I'll see. I'll give it a try because the axles and the wheels are easier to clean when they're out, but not impossible. So everything's been cleaned. On these wheels, I did something I had done previously, and I just wanted to see how it turned out. I think it's okay. Of course, my process was, and I'll tell you what that is in just a minute, the process was normally my washing with everything out, and then a alcohol wipe down, and then any kind of polishing that could be done with a steel rotary tool brush, and then another wipe down, and then after all final wipe down, then putting on a coat of CRC 226 on all metal surfaces. Now I did go to a little extra effort on the journal boxes in that I stripped down some Q-tips and went inside these journal boxes to make sure there was no buildup of old oil or grease. Now back to the axles and the wheels. These, of course, the plastic was done with just an alcohol wipe primarily. There was no super buildup of carbon on those that would require maybe a scrape down with an X-Acto knife. Now on the contact wheels, I inserted the end of the axle that has the plastic wheel into a handheld variable speed drill, and then I pressed the wheel down into a sandpaper sponge. Now I used, I think, a 320 grit. The next time I do this on the next trick, I'm going to use a 400 grit. I don't think that there's any bad striations put in the wheels. I don't want to do something that would maybe cause further carbon buildup, but they look pretty darn good. The last 2 steps were to coat them, clean them thoroughly, both of them, the plastic and the contact, with isopropyl alcohol, and then once that had thoroughly dried, or evaporated, I cleaned the contact wheels with mineral spirits. Of course, that takes a little bit longer to cure. I did all the cleaning with the light bracket out, cleaned the socket, the bulb base, everything looks really good. I still have to test the bulb. I haven't done that yet, but that's an easy swap if it isn't. And everything came out okay. Now I will do in just a moment a real quick push test on the track, on the railhead, just to ensure that we are getting a little bit better performance. And then after the body is put back on, I'll do another push test. And I can tell a lot by those push tests. I can already go ahead and get a feel for how much friction I may have eliminated. But it's all cleaned up and ready to go. I noticed that there was some strange places on here that looked like the patina had been removed from the metal, the black, and one back here as well, maybe a couple back there. Kind of strange, but I wanted to make sure those were thoroughly coated in CRC 226 to possibly keep the rust down. Now back to the wheels, all I do is I mount this end into that variable speed drill, and then I press the metal contact wheel up to the point that the surface of the sandpaper sponge comes up to the edge of the wheel. Doesn't take long, and boy does it clean these things off with the least amount of effort. Just not that many rotations or RPMs to get these things clean, and then a wipe down with isopropyl alcohol prior to putting on the mineral spirits, I think really helps. Let's take a quick look with a simple push test on the railhead. Sounded pretty smooth to me. I am pleased with the work that's done so far and the outcome. Now let's give the bulb a quick test on the railhead. All right, looks good.